Game changers, game changers. Welcome to another episode of At the Desk with Dr. KwA. Today we are going to be exploring a question that feels especially urgent right now. How do we prepare students, or better yet, as I call them, scholars, not just to graduate, but to participate in meaningfully rather, in democracy? I'm joined this evening, or today rather, by Ms. Doriel Inez Larrier, an educator, community builder, and advocate whose work spans education, civic engagement, faith based leadership, and digital empowerment. More than 3 decades of teaching and speaking experience, Ms. Larrier has dedicated her life to amplifying voices, strengthening communities, and advancing equity, particularly for women, children, and historically marginalized groups. As we celebrate Black History Month, this conversation invites us to reflect on where we as a people and as a nation are, the role education plays in shaping civic identity, and what it truly means to prepare young scholars to lead, serve, and advocate. Let's get into it. My special guest this evening, Ms. Doriel Larrier. Ms. Larrier, welcome to the desk. I'm glad you were able to pull up a seat. So we've had many conversations over the past, what is it now, 4 years? We are in year 4 since our meeting, our initial encounter.
Probably.
And so I came into Ms. Larrier's path based on her visit to my homeland, Ghana. And
Our homeland.
okay, cuz, okay. And from that point, we have established a friendship, a relationship around just civic related elements and just global interest in African American growth, position in the world, and leading and teaching and educating. She, as I've stated, she's an educator. So the passion as a former educator and still to some degree an educator, we've kind of found a niche for ourselves to make it work. So, Ms. Larry, tell us a little bit about what's been going on, because I want to get into this new course that you're teaching this academic year with our scholars.
Thank you very much. Of course, thank you so much for welcoming me to your desk. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And for the record, this is probably the part and parcel to you coming on to my show. I don't even remember when it was, but this is the other side of it.
Yeah.
So currently, I am very blessed and honored to be working in a school that decided that civics and civic education should be its own separate course. So
Mm-hmm.
those who know me, I'm born and bred in Brooklyn, New York. I hail
Oh,
Brooklyn
suck it. Shout out to Brooke.
every day. And so, and I work as a educator for the public school system.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 or 3 years ago, the system designed a course or a curriculum titled Civics for All.
Okay.
Brilliant piece of curriculum that is expanding underrepresented groups. Some people may name them marginalized. I don't want to use a diminutive term like that, but groups that definitely need to be a part of this, of the canon. I think that's a
Mm.
good word, of
Okay.
the education
Okay.
canon.
Okay.
So my school decided that it would not be like supplementary, but it would be a standalone course.
Nice.
Uh, Somehow, some way, I don't know, they decided, hey, would you like to try this? Probably because in my silent uh, rally ship, and being an ally and an advocate and activist in all of my spaces, they're like, maybe this will be like a really good partnership.
Okay.
So I took it on. I'm very excited to be utilizing the curriculum and sharing with our young scholars as I identify them as well. And in my class, they are actually they know themselves as citizens. And so
Okay.
they know, when I say like, who are we every day, they say, we the future, parlaying on, we the people. So they
Right.
say, "We the future," and then I say, "What are we here to do?" And their clarion call is learn, lead, and act.
Okay. So
So
with
I
that
take
in
each
mind,
one step by step.
with that, let me cut you off a little bit because I want us to delve into this conversation of civics, right? And so at this juncture, engaging scholars in this space. Why do you believe teaching civics is essential in today's education landscape? Because research and statistics show different. That this component of education has been marginalized, and very few states even have it on their radar with specified requirements. So, why do you find it to be an essential element, especially in today's climate?
I guess according to the role,
Mm-hmm.
civic civic education was a part of the traditional public school curriculum, or let's say state or nationwide curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
prior to, if I'm not mistaken, about World War II. It was a part of your regular,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. It was a
public
strong component.
strong component. And then with World War II, it slid across, and STEM education and science and mathematics education became a primary focus
Okay.
because, let's just say, this part of the world wanted to supersede another part of the world in the advancement of technology,
Okay.
comma,
Right. Uh
comma.
huh. Uh huh.
So, so civics got put to the side. No matter what the impetus was that drove it back to, let's say, one of the three R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic,
Mm-hmm.
it is extremely important because as young people who will be slightly older people, as they
Mm-hmm.
are expecting the society to respond to them, as they are finding their place in the society that they live in, no matter what level of education that they pursue, involving themselves in community, involving themselves in civic engagement, or interacting with the government, no matter if you think that you're involved interacting with the government or
Mm-hmm.
not, you are
Right.
going to. There needs to be a there needs to be a foundational understanding of who
Absolutely.
is who should I call, how what my rights are as a citizen, as a human being, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
and then as a citizen second,
Okay.
and that they're not bullied. And when I say bullied, I mean that from a humanistic standpoint and then from a citizen standpoint.
Okay.
Because depending on the community that you are a part of, your family, your culture, your historical place in the world already sets up a stage of what you have the permission to ask for, what you have the permission to demand. And it shows up so early that either the young person moves through, let's say, either their elementary school life, their middle school life, definitely by their high school life, with this altruistic, oh yes, I can ask for that, or because of the historical context in my family, my parents, grandparents, great grandparents, great great grandparents, depending on what
Mm.
community you're from, they will know they can ask for this and they should not ask for that. And
So.
so one second, so having civics be a part of the foundational, uh, literally their elementary and middle school life, they get to look at their parents and see how their parents are interacting with the
Mm-hmm.
society, and then start to ask additional questions of, yes, we can, or here's information that we should utilize, or I do have the right to ask for this and that.
So with that said, because I think you make the case for the reasons why civics should be an integral part of the educational landscape, but we know that it's no longer the case. It's been marginalized in favor of STEM, mathematics and reading and writing, right? And so with that, as you are teaching this new generation of scholars, are you finding a lacking in their comprehension as you begin the process? Are you finding a lacking in their comprehension of how the system in which they are being raised in works, right? This democracy of ours. Are you finding gaps in their understanding of their roles and responsibilities? Because you've traveled, I've traveled, right? And I know for a fact, uh, scholars in other countries, when we start talking about civics, they could run down things not only about our form of government and the way we do things, but they equally can speak to their own dynamics. And so, uh, my curiosity as you're venturing into this course, and I am so glad that your district or the New York school, I don't know if the entire state of New York or just the city of New York
So it's the
took
city.
on this, right? I am so happy that they've made it a standalone, and I think it's a year-long course.
Yes.
So the beauty of it is that you have states that don't even have that requirement or that expectation. The objective is that you'll find it in other subject areas and what have you, and it'll manifest itself as sprinkles here and there. But like the days of old, when this was something that everybody was expected to understand how the democracy works, how the system works, your voice, and in the process, finding one's voice. Are you finding with your scholars that there's a gap, right, as you're beginning this new venture with them in terms of their prior knowledge in terms of how the system works?
So I teach in an elementary school and I have K-5.
Okay.
So literally kindergarten through fifth grade. They don't know what they don't know until you tell them. So I'm going to give two specific examples. In my I'm I'm actually trying not to chuckle because when you hear it, you'll be like, I can't believe you did that. But then again, you'll
But
probably say that's the thing that you did
no,
forget.
you.
So here's what happened at the K1 level. In the curriculum, and mind you, anyone can go search for this. If you just type in civics number 4, the word all as one
Mm-hmm.
phrase, it is an open source material. Anybody can
Okay.
access. And so one of the lessons is about symbols of America.
Okay.
Symbols of America. So there's a page that has a picture of our Great Seal for America, which is
Mm-hmm.
the eagle with the banner, the ribbon in its mouth, the olives in one talon, the um, arrows in the other talon.
Right. Right.
On it says "E pluribus unum," and so we have to describe that. The other one is the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, and then I think the Statue of Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most of these symbols are fairly recognizable to just about everyone. The last picture, though, is the one that I said I'm going to give them the original name for.
Okay.
Now, because they've never really seen it before, again, these are 5, 6 years old, 6 year olds, they're only going to know what you tell them. So I said,
Or what they've been exposed to at that early age, right?
correct, but
Okay.
this community, and I said, have you ever seen this before? None of them have ever seen it before. So I
Wow.
was like, okay, here we go. So I said, my first word out of my mouth is, I said, so this figure, I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. This figure was originally and and uh, designed and built in a place called Kemet. Some people call that place Egypt. This structure was designed to point to the creator and like say thank you to the
Okay.
creator.
Right.
This structure, do you get what it is yet?
Mhm.
Okay, right. So this structure was so beautiful and incredible that people on another side of the world thought it was so amazing they wanted to make a copy of it.
Hmm.
They made a copy of it, and then they designed it and they put it right in the center of Washington, D.C., which is where our president lives.
Hmm.
I said, the name of this structure, and then I always say, watch my lips. I said, the name of this structure is called the Tekken. Now, because I've given that story,
Uh-huh.
wide eyes, they're like, oh, so I said, say Tekken. And they're like, Tekken. And I said, right. And I wrote it down, Tekken. And I said, so this is the name of the original name of the structure.
Mm.
Then I said, but you're probably going to see another name for it. The other name that you may see is, and then I said, the Washington Monument. And they're like, okay. I said, but whenever you see it, what did Miss Larry tell you it's called? The Tekken. I said, not many people call it that, but it's
Uh-huh.
called the Tekken. And I
So
said, another
that's a different foundation you're laying, though.
precisely. Now, and as I tell all my students, if you tell your family that and they have a question about it, just tell them to come ask Miss Larrier. But
Okay.
before they do, they should go Google the word and
Mm-hmm.
they'll see that that's the original word. So that's one example. The second example, though, is for my second through fifth grade classes. Part of the lesson is to teach them the Bill of Rights.
Well, how did we learn it?
First of all, when did we learn it?
Well, I mean, but think about, growing up, we had several shows, right? Just
Right?
oh, you with me now?
I'm just
And
a bill. Yes, come on, come
right,
on. We got
right.
Schoolhouse Rock. Saturday
Well,
morning,
eh,
8:15.
but guess what? Those things are no longer in play.
Well, they are, but you kind of have to
But
like search for
but you
that.
have to be intentional as a parent,
Correct.
intentional as an educator, intentional as a school system, right? To make sure that these elements, because when we heard the song, we already knew how a bill became law and the whole process,
Precisely.
right? Just from that. But that was back then, right? Today's society, those are not things that you find prevalent in the school system or even in
Right.
homes, right? So that's what I'm saying. This is something that we have to really make sure that we are intentional about when we are talking about civics and our scholars, our children know. Because I think growing up too, we were in households where, because of what was going on, right, our parents were vested, and there were conversations around, this bill that they passed, right? You kind of had a sense of some of the, you may not have fully grasped it, but you had a sense of what was going on, and a degree of awareness. Our scholars today are competing with a lot of stimuli, right? Social media supersedes almost any and everything. So therefore, uh, these elements of substance, I would say, get lost in the shuffle,
Hmm.
right? And so, as I'm hearing you intentionally also incorporating some historical elements, right, that kind of align with or speaks to what I would consider the theft of elements of the continent, right? Um, how do we parlay that into that idea of voice connecting directly to the communities that you've been advocating for?
Right. So that was actually I guess the next thing that I was going to talk about. So in the lesson it says, tell them about the Bill of Rights or describe the
Mm-hmm.
Bill of Rights. Now, of course, I grew up watching Schoolhouse Rock in the 70s, so of course I had to pull up, how a bill becomes a law and maybe two or three
Good.
others. I just really wanted to focus on. I really wanted them to sort of delve into the Bill of Rights. And so
Mm-hmm.
literally walk each one, I literally spend, let's say, about maybe 3 periods. So let's say 3 weeks on the Bill of Rights, and that means with each class. But this is only
Right.
for second grade through fifth grade. And I said, okay, listen. So the first Bill of Rights, and I had to make a lot of acronyms, and I said Bill number one. Talk about the preamble, and then I do bill number one, which I say hold up your hand, and then for each finger it's RAPPS, the freedom of religion, assembly, freedom of the press, freedom of petition, and then freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk in like it. I do a deep dive of what each of those things means. Then I
Okay.
say the Second Amendment, or the Second Bill of Rights, which is the Second Amendment, excuse me, which is the right to bear arms. And I almost wanted to skip over that, but I said no, the right to
Mm.
bear arms. And before I even really had them look at the picture very closely, I said the right to bear arms really is the right to protect. And I said protect your family, yourself, your family, and your property. And I left it at that. And then
Mm-hmm.
one of the students was like, are you telling us we have the right to own a, a gun? I said, you have the right, I focus, you have the right to protect yourself, your family, and your property.
That's
And
all
then I
they
had,
need. They Miss Larry said.
and listen, after every single day, I literally say, tell your parents I told you. Tell your
Okay.
parents I told you. If there's any questions, first of all, have them go look at the curriculum that we're talking about, and
Uh
then
huh. Uh huh.
come
Uh
to me. Let's have a great discussion. And so then but literally, I had to say with the Second Amendment, I said we had talked about rights and responsibilities prior to this. So you have a
Mm-hmm.
human right, and then you have a right as a citizen, and then with every right you have a responsibility. So I said with even the freedom of speech, I said you can say anything you want. You can say anything you want,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have a responsibility to be respectful and to, in essence, back up what you're going to say. So and I'll just say I live in Brooklyn. So, we'll say, like kind of like don't write a check you're behind can cash. I don't say it to my
That's an
students,
old
but I
school,
will
old
say,
school, old school, old school statement, right?
right, right,
Watch what you say, cause
that's right. You feeling froggish? Jump, right?
oh,
You
they
don't talk smack, and then you're gonna be like,
hamana
you're
hamana
not gonna back
hamana.
up. Right. So I said, with every right, you have a responsibility. So I said, with the right to bear arms, I said, here is what you have to go through in order to bear arms.
Okay.
I said, you have to, and so my students know. And it was really touching because some of my students have had family members, and let me just say this because I'm not talking about any specific person, because I know somebody from my teaching community is going to
Don't
watch.
listen.
No, no,
You
no, it's
know,
fine
no,
because
right?
everyone needs to know. I
Thank
said,
you.
if you bear arms, if your family decides to bear arms, or someone that you know, they have to go through a process. I said, number one, you have to fill out an application. The application, and I say it just like this. I've said it so much they know the steps. You have
Mm,
to fill out an application with the state. The state is going to look up, have you been a good citizen up until now? If you have
right,
not been a good citizen and not respected the laws, they're not going to allow you that application to go through. So they're not going to give you permission.
right.
Once you get the application and it's approved, then you have to go to a class, and the class is going to teach you what the rights and responsibilities are. Then you have to take that application with the course that you've taken, which teaches you how to make sure you keep it safe. And we talk about it, keeping it out of the reach of children. And they've seen or heard of examples of young
Mm-hmm.
people getting a hold of armament, and then someone winds up hurt. I
Yeah.
said, then you have to make sure you keep it separate. And then they're like, but Miss Larry, what if? And I'm like, oh my God, here we go with the what ifs.
You
So
know
I
you're
said,
gonna
then,
get what ifs. Come on now, especially with that age
what-
group.
which is why it took 3 weeks to teach this class. So they said, well, what if, somebody, but these were legitimate. And we kind of underestimate that and think that, 7, 8, 9-year olds, that they're not sort of aware of certain things, but then they're overstimulated with this other stuff
Mm-hmm.
in gaming. And so they said, but Miss Larry, what if someone comes and they're trying to like bring harm to you or trying to do something to you, and now here's the tricky thing. And I said, and someone who doesn't have the right to utilize it, is not the
Mm-hmm.
licensed person, gets a hold of it. I said, if you are, what I say, protecting yourself, protecting your family, protecting your home, If it is used, and then I had to say, here's one situation. The person is licensed. If they're licensed, they still have to appear before a judge, and God forbid someone gets hurt, they still have to answer to that situation. But
Mm-hmm.
if they're licensed, there is a protection because they're protecting their home, their self, their family. If they are not licensed, then you not only have to answer to the judge, but whatever happened to that other person or the property, you have a great, and I say a greater discipline. There's a greater discipline. And so I really, really, really drag that through their head so that they know. And because unfortunately, not unfortunately, let's just say it is the case that there are some families that have not gone through all those steps. But Miss Larry is something. I'm
Oh,
like, I
yeah.
fully
So
license.
that's critical that you drive home the importance of making sure
Being responsible.
documentation and the responsibility and accountability elements are addressed. I want to kind of move us into civics, equity, and representation, right? And the question, I guess, that's kind of, you know, as you're talking, I'm going. So, why is representation critical in how civics is taught?
Okay, I'm so excited about this one, this question. So in the community that I just think this is beautiful. In the community that I'm teaching in,
Mm-hmm.
the district leader, the city council person who who was actually just the council speaker was the
Mm-hmm.
speaker of the city council,
Right.
who's a woman. The assembly member, the senator, and the congress member, excuse me, were all black
Okay.
in this particular jurisdiction. So
Okay.
where my school is located, and you and I know assembly districts can overlap city council districts, but
Right. Right.
congressional
Right.
districts, da, 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 all that, all of them are black. And so when I pulled up all of their pictures to say,
Mm.
city council person, this is your assembly person, this is your, the children in that room were like, oh, okay. I told them, I said, I never knew who my city council, let alone a district leader. I didn't even know what a district leader was until a couple of years ago. Um, assembly member, whatever. I think I knew who my Congress member was,
Right.
and then I knew the president. I don't even think I knew the governor when I was growing up. But for some
Mm.
reason, I think I knew the senator or the senator's name. No, the Congress member's name. But I didn't know anybody else, and so I didn't know what their role was in my local life, in my local civic life. And so I actually took them through a simulation, and I
Mm-hmm.
said, and I think this is amazing. If anyone ever wants to do this with adults, I think it's a very, very amazing simulation to go through. So I designed a simulation where I took out maybe 10 actual, like, sort of issues or problems that have been in the councilmanic district. So in essence,
Mm-hmm.
what does a council member do? And I
Right.
took 10 problems, and then I took 10 solutions, put them on different colored cards, and I randomly gave it to students. And I said, all right, I'm gonna teach you what each of these problems kind of look like in your everyday life, like a broken street light, too much trash
Mm-hmm.
on the street, the park is something in the park is broken, and I walked them through how this impacts the community. Then I said, okay, you have 3 minutes. Go find the problem card people. You go find the action card people.
Okay.
And they had to sort of figure this out, like what would be the best solution to this problem. Now, I then took them through. Now, mind you, this is 8, 7, 8, and 9
Okay.
We spent 3 weeks. They found their person, and then they had to talk it out what would be the best course of action. I took them through the actual template or the actual protocol, let's say, of designing a bill, right?
Oh.
Bill to law, designing a bill. Then they had to talk it out, draft it. I gave them the actual, like, steps that a council member would utilize in order to
Right.
bring
Right.
a bill from the community to the legislative house or to write the legislation. And then they had to present it orally, and then I recorded them, and so they could watch what the actual recording looked like. And now I'm going to invite the local council member to watch their presentations. It was
Nice.
so phenomenal. Even students who have who don't really speak, students who are not engaged. When they saw that, wait a minute, I get to record myself doing this, and they were like camera shy. They were like, Miss Larrier, can I do mine again? I want to be clearer. It was a tear jerking moment. And so now these young people know, if I see a street light that's out on my block, what's the impact? Oh, I'm going to feel uncomfortable walking down the street.
Good,
Someone may
good.
grab, someone may actually run into me because the cars can't see where I'm going. What can you do? You call 311. You go to your council member's office. And they know all the steps, and I'm so proud of them. I
But
am
that's
so
that's
proud
that's
of them
that's
that they do this.
that's a beautiful exposure for those scholars, early and often, right? I
Absolutely.
want to kind of go back a minute to that representation. What was the
Mhm.
vibe once they realized that the people who are representing their given district all look like them,
But
right?
see,
Because,
that's the thing. If you don't know, then whatever you're presented with becomes your baseline. So the
but
fact that they saw all of these people and they're like, "Oh, okay."
but even with that, right? Even with that, I think it's critically important. As a kid, you get, oh, okay. Like, what was the reaction? Like, I'm saying, oh, right? Because I suspect there has to be a level of, oh, I could do that, right? That's that component, because I'm sure if they were watching regular television and you start talking about politicians and people who are represent, that's usually not going to be the faces that might come across their screen with the
Right.
degree of frequency, right? So to know that, hey, where I live, the people that are representing my town and my neighborhood and my community, they all look like me. And so and the fact that you've done this exercise, that definitely will give them the confidence to say, hey, well, Kwame looks like me, so let me give Kwame a call and see, if something can be done about this street light that's out on the corner of my block, type of deal. But I was curious to kind of get a sense of what you glean from the expressions and the reaction of your scholars when you show them that representation, what those representing them look like. Were you able to get anything or glean anything from that?
I think where it's going to make sense is, so when I was younger and someone would say, "Oh, you could be president." Now, mind you, I'm past half a century, right, years old. So you got to talk 50 something years ago. And
Uh huh.
someone's like, "Oh, you could be president." And in my mind, every time I looked on television, I saw someone who did not look like me. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a far stretch. But now the fact that these young people see their local, and I also taught them that there's a difference between being appointed and being elected. Being
Right.
appointed means, oh, Miss Larry is going to just choose you because you have her favorite color, aqua shirt on. Okay, great. But that doesn't mean you're the best. And I said, these people are elected. That means they are the smartest in their group and they convince everyone in their community that they could serve them best. So they understand, if these people were elected, that means that they are good at what they do and good at advocating. So now that they're like, okay, so they're smart, they they did a great job, like in meeting the public and telling them that they were going to serve them, and now they're
Mm-hmm.
sitting up there. So now I think their perspective is, when someone says, "Oh yeah, you can be a congressperson, you can be a senator, you can be a city, assembly member," they're like, "Oh yeah," because the person who I've grown up in Miss Larry's class knowing
Uh huh.
looks
Uh huh.
like
And
me, and right, and so it's easier, especially that we've had our first African American president. It makes it
right,
easier
right.
for them to say, "Oh yeah, I could possibly do that."
And I think and so the question that I think ties this all together is, can scholars advocate for themselves if if they don't see themselves reflected in the story of democracy? right?
And I
Because
think now they can because they see more of it.
so that's a question I would like our audience, to chime in on and kind of give their feedback and perspectives on. Um, let's kind of segue a little bit into the month that we are currently in. We're talking civics, and as we celebrate Black History Month, from where you sit as an educator, as a community advocate, as an individual who has championed voices of the marginalized, right? How do you assess the current state of African Americans in this country?
Of course, that's a loaded question. So I think we may
Hey,
have to
listen,
like
if
we
we
have to
made
double
the if
down
we
on that.
made coming to the desk an easy thing, what would be the point of it, right? Sometimes the questions got to be a little thought provoking, but I think is an you know we're talking civics, and
Okay, all
so
right.
from that lens, you know, we gonna keep you off somebody's radar.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So I'm going to bring up some names of people that if you are, and I know you know who these people are, so that's not the issue. It's really like, let me give a digital high five or like a shout out to the people who are my go to. These are my
Okay.
go to people when I want to learn and understand a little more about civics, about government, and I say this, and I'm going to copy the phrase that one of my go-to people uses. Like, I'm going to say this with my full chest. When I was younger, I had no understanding about civics, about government, and almost really until I went to college.
Hmm.
I I didn't. I just, and it was a slap in the face. And I'm saying this with all love and respect, but it was a slap in the face when I went to my college and then saw students who did not look like me, who were spouting political ideologies that I had no familiarity with. They was like,
Hmm.
oh, they were talking about Marxism and like socialism and other things, and I was like,
Hmm.
what are you talking about? And I just didn't know. So that's why I'm very fascinated now about political
Engagement.
debate, political dialogue.
Okay.
Political dialogue. So here are some of my go-to people. And again, I'm from Brooklyn, so I'm going to use some Brooklyn and like New York people.
Man, if Brooklyn ain't getting a shout out this session, boy, I don't even know. Game changers. If you're from Brooklyn, shout out to Brooklyn. Because Doriel
We
is
got
just throwing y'all all the alley oop every 5 seconds.
we gotta lift them up. So I definitely want to first. I want to give a couple of just list the names, but these are also some national people as well. So the first person I'm going to mention is Laurie Daniel Favors of the Laurie Daniel Favors Show. She runs the Center for Law and Public Law and Justice. I think that's what it's
Okay.
called. Edgar Evers College. She's on Sirius XM, but I watch her on YouTube. Professor Karen Hunter, who's actually from Jersey. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
your town, right? Jersey.
Yep. No, familiar
Um,
with her.
there we go. So, and she has a daily show, but then she also has a weekly show with Professor Greg Carr of Howard University. I would just pray to meet all three of you in the same room. I will like I can go to heaven after that. I
Nice.
one of my like uncles in the community is Professor James Small, who's a very good Baba to me. So I'm very blessed to be under his like guidance and direction. Dr. Julian Malveaux, economist and former, president of Ms. Bennett. Who else? And then there's Joy Williams,
Mm-hmm.
who is the former president of the Brooklyn NAACP, and then Joy Reid. Like, so these are some of the
And
people
and
that
and
constantly am listening to, and they look like me, right? And then
right.
it's Jasmine Crockett, even AOC, Tish James. So there are so many people who now are like in my ears, and no matter what you think about their what side of the fence that they're on, the fact that
Mm-hmm.
they are the ones that are speaking about our current state of our union and the perspective that through their lens. Oh, excuse me. Let me not forget Bishop. Leah Daughtry
Okay.
of House of the Lord, but Bishop Leah Daughtry in her own right. And so, again, these are some people who I hear on a regular basis. My Congresswoman, Yvette Clarke, my local assembly member, Bernice Bichot Hermelin, Kevin Parker, my senator. Like, there's just so many people who now I'm navigating with and engaging with and having
So
conversations with, and it's amazing because they all look like me. They all kind of grew up at the same time, and so their lens adds to what how I look at the world and how I look at how I am to engage in the world. And I'll literally
awesome.
just down to
So
my young people.
let me say this though, because that speaks to a level of progress, right, within our historical presence in this country, right? The fact that you can sit here now and really rattle off names of individuals who are doing things in the political sector, community, church, and what have you. But the question also becomes, what are our persistent inequalities that still exist within our presence in this country still, right? And so, while we hear some progress being made in terms of just the fact that we have leadership in various sectors, because it's not just one leader. Days of old, you had one individual that seemed to be the voice of the people.
And that
Now
just
you have,
running again.
right, now you have multiple voices. Do you see? Well, first let's address the persistent inequalities from your lens, and your lived experience, right? Um, for African Americans in this country currently, and then I want to also kind of get your insights on, now that there are so many different voices that different people gravitate to, and again, their perspectives come from their lived experiences, come from
Mhm.
the places where they're from and what have you. Does that have also an impact in the challenge of us unifying behind a given course?
Right. I thought that's
Cause,
where you
rather.
go. Right, where you're gonna go. So with a principle of Kwanzaa, and that would be the day one, which is umoja, right? Unity.
Mm-hmm.
Simply put, we all know this, that unity brings strength.
Absolutely.
Where where there is opportunity for whether it's the gr- mm, whether it's the counterculture or it's our own culture. So it could be interculture role division or intra-cultural division. Those things that seek to divide us, of course, looks great to the counterculture because then once we're running around like chickens without a head, then we're just running in all different directions.
Right.
Of course, there is a lot of conversation of, yes, let's be unified, and but then you get into the party politics, no pun intended, of well, who's going to be the leader. Uh, that's not where I am right now. I am fascinated by within our cultural perspective, the different perspectives that I thought that I did not know exist about how we see leadership makes me pause. For example, our former president, let's just, and I'm going to keep this simple,
Mm-hmm.
President Barack Hussein Obama. Every, not everyone, a lot of people spoke of him as being an icon, and in his presidency, the hope was, I'm trying to use my words very carefully. The hope was that he would speak to the needs of the Black community.
Right.
Let me leave that at that. It wasn't until after he got out of office that I then heard within my own community
Mm-hmm.
of things that he did not do. And in my eyes, I guess I was looking at the forest for the trees. I didn't know, again, because wasn't necessarily raised with a strong, like, we had political conversations, because in my family,
Right.
we just didn't. We voted, but we didn't have these like detailed conversations. So now I want to have them with my children. And so I didn't know that there was like disgruntlement about things that people thought that he should have done, or why did he do these things. And I was like, there's there's issues, but again, I don't know what I don't know. So I was like, that's interesting. But now that I do my own independent study and looking and what have you, um, I just yesterday I was watching a documentary about, oh my goodness, let me not. Who is the SCOTUS? Who is the first Black SCOTUS? I'm looking right at him and I can't call his name.
Who? Thomas?
No,
I'm
I'm
drawing a
looking right at
blank.
him.
And he's from New York.
I
Um,
know. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so but let me just go to someone easier.
Thurgood
We'll come,
Marshall.
huh?
Was it Thurgood?
Yes,
I'm
yes, yes.
there.
Oh my God,
Thank you.
thank you. Thurgood Marshall.
Okay, you're about to
Literally,
embarrass me. Look, my degree about to get taken back now. Jeez.
right. So,
Apologies
so
to
I
the
was just
black
watching this thing.
community for now coming off the top that
Please,
quickly.
we apologize. But like the same thing can be said of Thurgood Marshall and even of Martin Luther King. Like when they were in it, when they were literally getting all the stuff thrown at them, literally and figuratively, they were still pushing forward, and they were representing, because of their affinity to blackness, they were representing a larger group. But there were things that within our own community, that people in our own community were disgruntled about, and was saying, hey, you're doing this, but really, do you think, and maybe you should do something different. And it
So
wasn't until, for me, well, hold on. So the point is that in terms of the unified, should we push together for a single agenda? I think that's great. But even within our own community, there are people who are now saying, should quote unquote, should the majority of us be Democrat? Should the majority of us be, or should some of us be Republican? Should some of us be independent? Should some of us be working families? And I was like, I didn't even know kind of like the options, like, do the options matter? And I'm hearing, because again, what I was presented,
mhm.
let's be one, but now I'm actually recognizing that to have people in different parties or to represent different perspectives, as long as there's a single agenda, and the agenda is goodness and moving us forward and elevating ourselves as a community, that's the central focus. Be in whatever room you need to be in, but keep in mind that we need to be going forward together. I think
and
that's
and I think that's a critical element in your commentary. The need to go forward together, regardless of which path we're taking. I think my inquiry was really just trying to glean in our current state. I don't know that we are able to galvanize around a singular cause with the same fervor that once upon a time used to be the case. And so I think that's part of the reason why I was trying to glean from you whether the varying voices and the divergent perspectives are the reasons why it's difficult to kind of pull together and say we're all going with Mark. We can hey, this all matters to us. Let's go for it together, regardless of what pockets we're coming from. And we could go back to our divergent spots after the fact, but we want to make sure we
Mhm.
accomplish this goal type of deal. Um, I want to move us because time is really is against us, and I don't want to overstate our presence in this space. But when we talk about civics, um, what I want to also kind of bring into the equation is the digital spaces as a civics classroom,
Hmm.
right? And so modernize the civic, trying to modernize the civics or modernize civics conversation. Uh, you are a content creator, so I appreciate you being subjecting yourself to being the the
On the other side of the
the
chair.
recipient of these inquiries, right? And so, how can digital platforms expand civic engagement for young scholars or young people, right? As creators, you are one. I'm working on becoming one in a meaningful way. How can our respective platforms expand civic engagement for our young people?
There is something to be. Oh, as a matter of fact, let me hold this book up right now because we can't go through this month without holding this book up right now. I don't know if it's
Oh, it's, I
reversed
see
or
it. It comes up.
okay. All right. So all of us, if you have this book, let me shift over. There we go. All right. If you have this book, dust it off the shelf.
Brother Woodson, yes.
Dust it off the shelf. We cannot go through this moment, no matter if you see this 10 months from now, 10 years from whatever. We are in African Heritage Month, formerly Negro History Week, now Black History Month. And this day, this month, as a matter of fact, yesterday is the official 100th anniversary of Black History Month, right? Designed by Dr. Carter Godwin Woodson. But if you have this book, like dust it off. So there's something to be said about opening a book. And so actually when we went to like those, what is it? The Kindles and whatever, and I was like, wait a minute, like there's something to be said about, about dog earing a book and like here, like, wait, let me just where is it? Like my highlights, right? I don't know if you're gonna see them.
Nah, that yes, that
Right.
okay.
But so here's my point. I think that, and again, I don't even think it's just that I'm a teacher. I think we've gotten so far removed from sitting and poring over text and poring over pages and pausing and thinking and going back and again highlighting and circling and writing in the margins and giving ourselves time to marinate and to meander over what words are and mean and how they strike us because we're in a digital space that
Okay.
things so fast and so varied. Yes, it does wake up a different part of our brain. I also think, and this is me as a content creator, okay, fine, that it kind of dulls a little bit of our senses because the need for that instant I guess the dopamine rush, right? The dopamine rush
Right,
of like,
right.
I want it, and so I'm gonna get it. But then because of the algorithms, it kind of the algorithms kind of curate what we tend to spend time on, but then it pulls us away from some of the information that we really should spend more time on.
So when you say that, right, I want to jump in. So as you're saying this, right, remember picking up that book you just did, highlighting and doing all of that. That's a different generation. That's a
I,
different generation, right? And so with the algorithm doing what it's doing, and you know how and so for content creators, how do we make that civic component enticing enough that I guess the algorithm will make it a element that pops up on the feeds of our young scholars, right?
got it. So here's well, I'll put it out there now because I tried to be a little sneaky link and do it behind closed doors, but I'll put it out there, right? I'm put it out there. So I actually, and because this is like a remnant of being home for, Rona 1.0, those people who know what Rona 1.0 is, right? 5 years ago, 6 years ago,
Uh huh.
next
Uh huh.
year, shut down. So if we can't get together physically, because now we're, across the waters is now just a click away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in going back to a space where we do crack a book together.
Okay.
And when I see my students, and this is kind of like it's the remnant. It's the remnant. There's so many books that are read online with permission, right? With permission, that students are now so glued to looking at a screen to receive all their information that to say, even go look up a word in the dictionary, not just a couple of weeks ago, my students were like, a what?
It's a
Then
foreign
I need
language to them.
correct. And if anyone's read the book Fahrenheit 411, you know, where certain books were just banned and like taken off of, you know, it was almost like the only thing that you could absorb in terms of information was through the box or that the tube, which we would sort of call like the boob tube,
Hmm.
but that your ability to actually go seek information for yourself is now uh, culled and cultured through what the government or whoever the powers that be want you to know. If you don't go look for those things yourself, then you literally are subjecting your mind and your existence to something that's curated for you. Given that, as a digital creator, because of who I am, I want to make sure that as I move forward, even if I'm, let's say, during a particular month of the year, I'm going to drop certain piece of information that someone can see visually. What I need to be authentic about is saying, here's the reference. Go look it up yourself. If you choose to, that's fine. But
Hmm.
also, don't depend on Wikipedia because Wikipedia can be amended at the drop of a hat once you click that little
Of
button in the upper
course,
right
of course,
corner,
of
right?
course.
But I say that to my students because I'm like, listen, oh, where'd you get that information? Oh, I got it from Wikipedia. And then I pull it up and I show them. So watch Miss Larry just change the information. And then I say, so what does that mean? What does that mean I can do? Who and I say, who controls knowledge? It's the person who crafts it. But if you just saw me change information that's in Wikipedia, I could tell you the sky is actually purple. Well, you know what I mean, or whatever. And I'm your dynamic. So again, content creator, digital, do I produce more? Will I produce more information? I want to make sure I produce information that goes back to, hey, let's pick up this book. Oh, let me just read you this page. Hey, what do you think it means? I want to make sure that I get them back to like as best primary sources or the primary people who wrote them, and not just
Okay.
somebody off of the TikTok.
And I appreciate that, but and also understanding the fact that it's critically important that we meet our scholars where they are, and today that is that digital space, right? So trying to um, get them to grasp the importance of actual books, right? My son can't. He needs to feel it, touch it, and I find that fascinating. But that's how we raise him, right, with a book in his hand. So now, even trying to go to a Kindle or any, one of those devices along those lines, it's difficult for him. That's not his preference. He's one of those kids that needs to touch an actual book, and he goes to the library, right? Very few scholars are doing that unless they're taught how to go to the library, how to find books, and using the codes and all of that stuff that we used
Mm,
to do, right? So those
you
are
read that
all those have all become antiquated elements. But before I let you go, because we are time is running up against us, I want us to have I want to close out with this inquiry as a current civics teacher, right? What is one civic skill you believe every scholar needs to graduate with?
ooh, to graduate with.
Mm-hmm. So that's question one. And then the final one is, what mindset shift do educators need to embrace right now? So those are my two questions for
Oh
you
my goodness.
to hit us and quit it type of dynamic so we can go home from
Hey,
there.
okay, okay. Let's wait. The first one. Let me stick with the first one because I think the second one is like is a lot of gray matter. Wait, the first one I think is easier.
You think the
Um.
first one is easier? The skill scholars need
Oh
to
yeah,
grad? Okay,
yeah,
talk to me. What
yeah.
should that be?
Understanding the branches of government, understanding how an idea becomes legislation, how it goes to the executive branch, and as I say to my students, it can get approved. Oh, sorry, it can get approved or it can get vetoed. If it gets vetoed, goes back to committee, gets argued again, gets improved, goes back. If it finally gets approved, then it goes to, the judicial branch, and in essence, whatever the law is, then the law gets judged by whatever is fair or just or right. I think that if you understand nothing else, understand how these laws are made, changed, modified, and then judged.
So, would you also say that it is critically important for scholars to actually live it? By that meaning civic engagement with respect to actually because we have to not only focus on just how a bill becomes law, but the other aspects of civics, right, are critically important. That community participation and active engagement, that's where the voices are found, and I think we will be doing a disservice to our audience and our scholars who might tune in that just knowing how a bill is done is the end all be all. But I think it's critically important that we encourage active participation outside of the classroom. In essence, that civic element manifesting itself in deed and action, right? Um, with respect to that mindset piece, what mindset shift would you say educators need to embrace in the current landscape of education?
I think the only way I could explain or share this is when my colleagues would come and pick their students up from my class. I would always say, hey, give them sort of like the Reader's Digest version, if you will. Hey, this is what we talked about. They'll see what I have on the board. They'll see what the students have either written or drafted or illustrated, what have you, or they'll get their talking points. And they always look at me like, you're teaching this? I said, they're like, this is so important. They constantly say, this is so important. I don't remember learning this. We can't wait, in essence, wait to see what the students are going to like do with this and how they're going to be like better engaged citizens. And they say like, wow, we wish that we had the time to teach this, but it's literally an entire curriculum in and of itself. And so
Mm-hmm.
for you to even try to teach this with social studies, literally it has to be a standalone course. It has to be a standalone course. And so I implore any school system, any citizen or community, if your city or state doesn't have it, hop over to Civics for All. Again, it's open source. You can
Right, 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 right.
download it yourself and then like bring it over to your own district or community. But if we do not let our young people know how they can advocate for themselves, be active participants in their community. I tell my students, especially when they're kind of, being like this, like, I don't want to do this. And I say, if you don't make decisions for yourself, someone
Oh,
is going to make decisions when you get up, when you go to sleep, how much you eat, what you eat, when you go to the bathroom, where you walk, where you live,
mm-hmm.
everything. So either you learn now or you're going to learn later. And I leave it at that. And
All
then
right,
they
now we're
usually
gonna
like,
learn today. We're gonna learn today. That's what's.
you're going to learn today.
Listen. So grateful that we were able to make this conversation happen, Miss Larrier. Uh, Game changers. Today's conversation reminds us that civic education is not an add-on; it's foundational. When scholars understand their rights, responsibilities, and voices, they're better equipped to shape their communities and their futures. As we honor Black History Month, we're also reminded that history is not just something we remember, it's something we carry forward through action, advocacy, and education. Thank you, Ms. Larrier, for joining us at the desk and for the work you continue to do to uplift voices and build community. And thank you to our listeners for staying engaged in conversation that truly matters. This is At the Desk with Dr. KwA, the podcast where transformation begins with conversation. I thank you, audience, for joining in. Please Share your insights, your comments. We truly appreciate you joining us and tuning in. And of course, while you are here, you might as well like us and subscribe. Ms. Larrier, thank you so much for joining us and taking your seat at the desk. And we appreciate you so much. And look forward to seeing what your scholars put on the world stage as they move forward. Thank you all for being here. Be well.